Welcome back to the Building HVAC Science podcast. I've worked in this market of HVACR and building performance for well over 30 years, maybe approaching 35 years. And I've noticed a need for scientifically rooted information on how to do a job technically correct. But there's also other aspects to it. And in this episode, Eric and I interview Wyatt Smith, who's founder and CEO of Upsmith. You got a link to Wyatt's LinkedIn profile in the bio, as well as the website, his website for Upsmith. And they are working on using software to benefit individuals and employers in the skilled trades. Very interesting product, very interesting discussion. We get to learn more about Wyatt, get to learn more about how he moved into this area of creating a software which reward tradespeople for their performance in real time, actually in real time. And they've got demonstrated facts about it increasing productivity and boosting morale by acknowledging and incentivize workers' contributions. So let's learn more from Wyatt Smith about how tech meets the trades and Wyatt Smith's mission to modernize workforce productivity. Good afternoon, Wyatt.
Glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
You have a very peppy voice, Wyatt.
Building something I'm excited about and excited to talk about it.
That must be it. So without further ado, why don't you get into telling us who Wyatt Smith is and why he's on this podcast today?
I'm Wyatt Smith. I'm the founder and CEO at Upsmith. Our mission is to combat America's skilled worker shortage and really help people flourish in high dignity, high purpose, lucrative careers in the trades. We're running at this problem at a time that's really challenging for a lot of your listeners who work in lead companies in skilled trades. There are shortages in every discipline of talent to take on these roles, in part because of the supply side replacement rate challenge, more folks leaving than joining. But at the same time, there's also big macro challenges. Interest rates are high. There's uncertainty in the market. A lot of opportunities for serving customers got pulled forward during COVID for people. And so as a result of that, every incremental lead is precious. And for companies that are increasingly having to rely on entry-level personnel to go capture those leads, it's more important than ever to be using technology to do that in strategic ways. And so our company, Upsmith, builds software to tackle that challenge and help trades companies win. And so I'm really excited to share more about that today.
Very good. And one thing that I like is that you're from a different part of the world, from the technology part of the world, and you're applying, I'll say, process, patterns of analysis and things like that. I'm starting to hear more and more of this, like the pull forward of opportunities in COVID. Can you just even explain that phrase?
So in the trades business, pulling forward a lot of opportunities during COVID refers to the dynamic where a lot of folks were sitting at home during the pandemic and looking at each other and saying, gosh, there's this home improvement project we've been putting off for a long time. Because we're spending so much time at home right now, gosh, maybe it is time to make that investment. And so a lot of the latent demand that, in particular, companies in the HVAC industry were notionally going to see in 2022 and 2023 happened in 2020 and 2021. Some of the numbers I've seen would indicate that a latent demand of 9 million system installs across the United States were pulled forward, and normally it would have been 6. And so if you increase by 50% your opportunities, that's great. But because of the natural cadence of system replacement, it meant that in 2023 and 2024, the opportunities that you would have seen from systems that had just become more than 10 years old had already been replaced. And so that makes it tougher for a trades company that a lot of their profitability is built around doing new system installs would find, given that a lot of the low-hanging fruit has been picked.
Where do you get that kind of data?
We talk to trades companies every day. We're fortunate to be partnered with some really terrific ones. I learned from them. And then also, we were really involved in a few different industry organizations. I would shout out the folks at the ACA team. They do really great work, Air Conditioning Contractors of America. And so through those partnerships, we learn a lot. And we try to make that useful for building a better product for serving them.
I want to know a little bit more about you. Like, how did you end up doing something like this? What brought you to this point or starting Upsmith?
Thanks for asking. I'm a farm kid from Alabama. My dad's a cattle rancher. We have a family business that he has built over decades, and I grew up working for him. He would probably say I was a not so skilled worker. He was a tough boss. But it was a very challenging but formative childhood. I learned how to repair tractors and build fences and feed cattle. And most of my classmates in our small town went into the trades or the military. I was the only person from our graduating class of 27 to go more than 50 miles from home. And after college, I had an opportunity to become a classroom teacher, would Teach for America in Alabama, served in Birmingham. And a lot of my students, the people that I was coaching, I look at the trajectory that they've had since we worked together, and many of them sought college, many of them sought post-secondary work, but unfortunately, they're not better off. They're in many cases worse off for the decision, not because they're bad, but the quality of the programs that they sought out were not very high. And so I've thought a lot about how technology can play a role in helping people pursue super meaningful, high dignity work that is essential to the backbone of our country during a time where that's more needed than ever. And after several years in the tech sector, the last several of them at Uber, leading business development, I had a chance to think about starting something new. And it really was a return to that formative experience on the farm and in the classroom that was the vision behind Upsmith.
Let's, at this point, describe what is Upsmith? What is the product or the service that you're offering now?
At Upsmith, we build software to help trades companies win. Our focus is on workforce productivity. So the revenue that you can generate from your skilled workforce. And the belief that we have is that both new and experienced tradespeople can be real profit-driving forces inside their companies if you align their behavior with the outcomes that you know drive the needle. So we build software that recognizes and rewards people when they perform tasks in ways that match best practice. And in doing so, we increase the rate at which trades companies can deliver on their service model in the way that they want and have that show up in the financial outcomes that ultimately drive their business.
When did this really get off the ground and you had your first customers?
Our core focus at the start was around helping get new people into the trades. And we started with an apprenticeship accelerator for electricians in Memphis, Tennessee, around 2 years ago. What we learned through that apprenticeship accelerator is that people that have really good work ethic and really good motivation can be successful very quickly if they have the right coaching, if they have the right apprenticeship, which is a tale as old as time in the trades, but one that we could help really accelerate through technology to access more people. Very quickly after having launched that accelerator, we were asked to help a number of home service companies who had a similar challenge, but were very focused on getting new preventative maintenance techs into their businesses. And we launched a product that was very focused on doing that called Upskill, which we deployed across 15 or 16 states and grew pretty rapidly through 2023. What we kept hearing from customers was that while it was awesome to get new people into the seat, where they really needed help was in ensuring that their existing workforce could produce more. It has to do with that challenge we've alluded to. More competitive environment than ever. Every lead is precious. Increasingly having to rely on entry-level personnel. And so we began prototyping a piece of software that can ultimately reward people for performing in ways their companies know will drive the needle. I'll give a very specific example. In any home service consult, the more time that a technician spends getting to know a homeowner, doing a home inspection, asking really great questions, and then presenting multiple options for service on how to address their challenge, it correlates with a better success rate. It's a happier customer. It's a higher probability of a conversion of that opportunity. It tends to correlate with a bigger ticket size. And so we build software that every time multiple options are presented to a homeowner, we can send a text message to that technician saying, great job. Here's 500 Upsmith points as a recognition for what you've done. And that can power leaderboards. It can power competitions. You can redeem those points for tools, other types of things that make you more productive at your job. And we're seeing a big lift, 10 to 15% improvement in many cases on revenue per assigned job, which in an increasingly difficult market environment is very powerful for the companies we serve.
That's really awesome. You talked about recognizing and rewarding. You mentioned the rewarding part. How does recognizing come about?
One cool thing about human behavior is as humans, we really seek affirmation that what we're doing is good. It's universal. Unfortunately, because people's time is stretched so much in our industry, it's tough often for a service manager to have the space in their calendar to do that. And so by recognizing when people perform in an excellent way through technology, it drives a sense of motivation. Daniel Pink wrote a book about this topic, and he writes about how really it comes down to autonomy and mastery. So if you feel like you got the freedom to operate and you feel like you've really build a skill in some area, that's highly motivating and it drives lots of choices people make. And so building on that research insight, a lot of our focus with Upsmith is to say, Bill's a phenomenal craftsman. He may not get a lot of recognition for being phenomenal. Let's build a rewards trigger that does that every time it happens. And it can be another way that he's able to get a sense for the impact of his work that will help also contribute to his longevity in that seat. He's going to stick around longer and feel like it's a really good thing to do.
Sure. And I think it would increase on-the-job happiness. And there's just so many things out there, listen to podcasts about just bumping your happiness by 10% and what that does to like the rest of the day for you and the way you interact with people and the pay it forward concept. So
Totally.
10 years ago, you never could have convinced me that psychology would play into the work that we're doing, but it really does because it's about people. So much we do is about people.
Yeah, I'll give a quick example from when I was teaching that we think about a lot. So there's a concept in education around positive behavior narration. And the idea is pretty simple. If you state something that you want to have happen, and then as soon as you initiate the timing of observing it, you just say out loud, people that are doing the thing you asked, people when they hear their names referenced, Bill is on task, it leads them to do that behavior more often because we seek just validation that we're doing things in the right way. Oftentimes in education, people are called out for bad stuff. Your name goes on the board, you go on a list if you're giving a consequence. It ends up in many cases promoting the bad behavior because that's how you are getting recognized. And so when I was given this instruction, I was like, there's no way this is going to work for high school kids. They're going to be too wise to this. When I would use positive behavior narration in our classroom, 17-year-olds would start positive behavior narrating themselves. Jermaine's on task. Jasmine is performing as she was supposed to. And so the same thing is true for adults. If you can find ways to say like, hey, look, you're really expert at this. When you perform your task in this way, we're better off, our customer's better off, and we're going to reward that. It fundamentally changes behavior. In many cases, we see 2.5 times increase in the number of 3-option consultations technicians perform in the field, as an example. Within 2 weeks, it happens almost right away.
How does a contracting business, this is something a business would employ. It's not an individual tool. It's something that businesses employ. Walk us through the basic steps. Someone says, hey, I'm interested. I want to go forward. Who do they contact? What are the major things that go on?
It's really simple. Come to upsmith.com. We have a really simple portal for reaching out to our team. We'll hop on a call, learn about your business. And if you choose to move forward, it's very simple, particularly if you're using one of the more popular field service management platforms. So as an example, Service Titan has a number of what are called API keys. It's an application interface where we can get access to the data that's being generated off of field service tickets. With that code, our team within a matter of a couple of hours can pull in information, set up accounts for all the technicians at a company, and then with their phone numbers be issuing messages right away. It happens seamlessly. There are no downloads. There's no app. There's no new workflow that you have to adopt. It's just pulling off of that record that exists in Service Titan in this example. And our goal in doing that is to make it extremely simple and easy, centered on the experience of the technician. And our belief about why that's important is most folks that build software that is sold through a business-to-business type environment sometimes don't really care that much about how the user experiences it because, well, they don't have a choice. We think that's a pretty bad way to go about it because if it's not fun and engaging to use, then it doesn't achieve the impact that the company is hoping by making the investment in the first place. And so by designing for the technician who's spending most of their day in a truck, most of the day on the road, most of the day engaging with customers and problem solving, we make it really easy for that person. After the visit happens, we're able to text message them to say, hey, Bill, hey, Eric, great job. Here are points that reward the behaviors that you just demonstrated. And here's all the ways that shows how you're performing relative to others and what you can do with it. And we'd be happy to get started with anybody out there that's looking to grow productivity from their workforce because it's an essential problem to solve.
These are delivered by text. The communication means with the technician is by text.
Yep, it's by SMS. You could get it on your phone or a tablet, but for the most part, most of our users are using their cell phone.
And how about the back end, like setting up the system? What equals a reward? All those kind of things that, say, a service manager would be in charge of that. Is that correct?
Yep. Sometimes it'll be a sales manager, sometimes a service manager. Occasionally, it will be the operations leader for the business or the CFO. Generally speaking, our model is for every dollar you invest into this system, we want you to be able to generate 10 of incremental revenue. And so the way we think about that is for each behavior that matters most, there's some type of point system that is redeemable. Roughly 1 point is 1 penny. And so in the event of a 500 point award, that's around a $5 recognition for the work someone's done. Our goal then is that behavior is correlating with an opportunity for conversion in a home service environment. As an example, that could be for $50. And then you can scale that up accordingly on the basis of ticket size and the size of the opportunity. What we're seeing is that that return is really addressable if you are able to move the lagging metric, sales conversion, number of jobs, dollars per job. But oftentimes, when companies experiment with leaderboards or they're setting a batting order for who goes out when, they're only focusing on the output. They're only focusing on the existing sales conversion, the existing ticket size, which doesn't do a lot for you if you're at the bottom of that list. So by focusing on the input, the thing that the person has control over, and saying, we're going to give you rewards and hit the trigger that you're doing the right thing every time you do it, it shows up in the lagging metric.
It's the how of where you approach things. It's the behaviors, going back to those statements about positive behavior narration and recognizing behavioral practices.
That's it.
I'm looking at your website now, very nicely done. The landing page gives you what I believe is a really quick walkthrough. And it shows like you can actually see your incentive history. What is that about? How's that playing?
The idea here is, as a technician, it's really important to be able to speak to the things that you've done and the reason why it led to a good outcome. When we talk to lots of contractors who've experimented with this before, it's often logistically really challenging to run the administrative process for this. So you've got guys writing stuff on whiteboards, you have people in the back office that are putting stuff into an Excel. Maybe it goes to the controller for paying someone a spiff, but that sometimes will take 4 or 6 weeks later before it shows up in their paycheck and they can't remember exactly what it was for in the first place. And so within our product, we want to make it really easy to speak to the behaviors, the jobs, the actual people served, and link the behavior someone showed to the outcome it generated in a way that makes it more likely that they would do it the next time.
So this information was just hanging around out there and you figured out a way, a method, and used some insights to weave it all together into something very productive for companies. Kudos. Very nicely done.
Thanks. We're really excited about it. I'll use this as an opportunity to shout out some of the companies we're serving that just do really awesome work. The team at Roto-Rooter in California is one of the largest drain cleaning, plumbing, water restoration companies in the country. And we've been working with them for several months. We just released some data about that in a case study that's on our website. People should check it out on our blog. And we were with them in San Diego earlier this week to share some of those results. What's really cool about the technicians at Roto-Rooter is I think they reflect the excellence of a lot of tradespeople across the country insofar as they're really focused on serving people well. And their culture is about solving problems. There's a guy named Jalen Brown who we've worked a lot with in Sacramento. Jalen grew up on a reservation in the Dakotas, moved to California as a young man, had some apprenticeship opportunities with some older people that took an interest in him, and it changed the trajectory of his life. This guy is the highest performing technician in the network as it relates to the number of times that he performs the behavior in the way that matches the playbook. We're talking like out of 100 opportunities, 97 of them would reflect having hit the mark. And when the 3 that didn't, he's got a pretty good story about what was unique about it, right? About why it didn't happen. The very first opportunity we had of rolling this out with them, we wanted to surprise him because it was a really good example of somebody doing it the right way every time. And so there was this Traeger grill that we brought out and surprised him with. And you would have thought that we were giving away like Super Bowl tickets. The place lit up with enthusiasm. They were all taking pictures of him with the grill, asking what he was going to cook for everybody for lunch that day. Watching as he talks about his job, and the grill's a nice recognition. The reason he does it though is because he wants to serve people well. And his reflection on working with us has been, the cool part about this is it helps everybody. So the company's better off, it's a better outcome. He as a technician is better off. It's not just a proverbial pat on the back, but it's also like more effective compensation for the work he does, aligned with outcomes. And those outcomes are creating a better experience for their customer, the homeowner that's called him out. When you're calling a plumber and you've got a water restoration issue, that's a pretty bad day. And so when Jalen Brown's the person that rolls up to your home, you're going to get a great experience. And serving people like him is a really big honor for us, and one we're excited to keep having an opportunity to do.
Overall, it sounds like you're getting a lot of great technicians or getting great feedback from the technicians. Is that pretty much universal with all the technicians that are using it? Because this is one of the things, that's the people we're trying to help with this, is the technicians that are actually out there doing the work.
No, 100%. And I think anytime you're building a new product, a new software, there's stuff about it that doesn't work. That's very natural for building anything. And so the way we think about that at Upsmith is we invest in customer success, and we have an excellent team that right now, today, are riding around in trucks on service calls with our partners and doing it to get a better understanding of that person's day-to-day experience, the things that are hard, the things that they wish could be different. And we're using that to inform how to make our product better. And so if somebody's having a hard time accessing their points, or if they're like, gosh, I really would love it if I could have access to this really cool tool that I know would help me do my job better, but it's just too expensive for me to purchase myself. And many times the company wants them to have that tool. And so if they can set that up as an opportunity that they unlock by virtue of having earned points and done their job well, it's a win-win for everybody. So we're in listening mode all the time on how to improve this in a way that's going to create a better outcome.
Very nice.
Yeah, this sounds like a fantastic product that I would have enjoyed when I was in the field.
Tell me more about that. What was your experience like?
Depending on what company I worked for. Some of them were really good about rewarding and paying attention to what we were doing in the field. And they had certain metrics at looking at things. We even had one company where after we did an install, we turned in pictures. And then all the technicians, so on the install side, we would turn in pictures of retrofit installations in HVAC. And then the service technicians would come in, look at those pictures and vote on which ones they liked the best, which I thought was really cool because we got a chance to get recognized for doing something. And in the HVAC world, a lot of times the way the installation is done affects service later. And that was a big piece of our company because we did a lot of retrofits, but we also went back and did maintenance on them and service later. And they were longtime customers and we kept that up. So it was important to do good installations that would then help the service department do their job better later and help the customers maintain their equipment better. So that was a neat thing to do.
That's a great insight.
And some companies just didn't really care.
Yeah. When you got that recognition, how did it impact you?
Oh, it was a great motivator. But I could see where having the technology, because we would physically have to bring everybody into the office to do that or into a physical location. So I could see where having the ability to maybe do that all through an app would be an interesting methodology for something like that.
Yeah, certainly that's our goal. I would imagine that a lot of the service managers that you were working with wanted to do it, but it might have been tough for them to find the time. Was that a challenge that you were encountering as well?
Oh, I think absolutely. Anytime you can automate a process that somebody's doing manually and reduce the number of human inputs on something, it makes that whole process go smoother typically. And it also makes for fewer errors or fewer biases in things.
Totally.
In a way, it's like same thing we try to do at TrueTech is just make it easier to do better work.
Yep.
We do our part. You're doing your part. There's other manufacturers and providers that do their part. This is really cool.
Yeah. I'm smiling too. I think about Eric's comment about how really quality installation sets up better service downstream. I was changing out filters for our family's HVAC system this morning, and the team that installed this did a phenomenal job. The space is really open. It's really clear, easy to access. Everything's well labeled. And having built a lot of exposure in the industry now, you know what good looks like. And I wish I could find the builder of this thing and give them a kudos, because if I was getting a service call to come out to my house, I'd be like, gosh, wow, somebody really thought through this. I wish I could send some Upsmith points to that contractor who installed it.
That'll be like version 2.0 when you have the time machine impact going on. You can just send it back through time.
That's it. On the roadmap.
Yes. Anything you can talk about that's actually on the roadmap?
Certainly. Our philosophies on company building is to listen really well to customers and listen really well to the problems that they have. Because ultimately, you build a great company if you're obsessive about your customer's problem. And so when we talk to trades companies, what we learn is that for many people, it's a question of how to drive standardization and consistency in meeting the bar that they have for serving people. And so a lot of what we're building right now is focused on how to do that well. One small example, there's a lot of data that is unstructured, meaning it exists in some form, but it's difficult to access it or do something with it. And technology can play a cool role in this of saying, how could I help a technician before he or she enters a home or a business or somewhere they're going to get the best information possible about what are they going to encounter? What are the things that the person said in the dispatch call? And then what are all the things that are likely happening that you could use to supplement the diagnostic? Now, for a lot of senior people who've been around for a long time, this is like second nature. It's just running up. But for somebody that's been in the trade for 6 months, who normally would need to call their service manager and talk that through, and a lot of folks invest in call-by-call coaching, it's a very powerful thing, but it's one that I think we can create a ton of leverage for service managers in doing that with technology. And so we're doing some testing right now around that idea that's got some pretty promising opportunity. And we'd be super excited to engage with anybody that was out there interested in learning about that too.
Very interesting. When you say create the standardization and consistency, I'm sure just by knowing little that I know about you, that it's with humanity involved. It's not robotics. You're not turning something into automation. There's consistency of purpose or goal, but there's still leeway in terms of how you get there.
I'll give you a very specific example. So what is the way that you greet the homeowner when you show up at their home? What is the way that you show deference to them by asking if you parked your truck in the right spot? Would they like you to move it? What's the way that you acknowledge the honor they're doing you by inviting you into their home by putting on floor savers or covers on your shoes? This is a service business. So like ultimately it's about how do you serve people really well. And the companies that I most admire that I've had a chance to work with here really put a lot of thought into that. And they realize that the reason they'll be successful isn't because of pricing or their marketing, or it's the service quality that they perform for people. And so the challenge for them is how do you help get back course corrected if service quality goes sideways, if somebody is inexperienced and doesn't know the system, or if they're feeling a lot of pressure in an engagement that leads them to cut a corner. And that's the thing we want to help provide technology to support folks on, with the belief that validation and affirmation is many, many, many times more powerful than punitive measures for getting the outcomes that you want.
That's an interesting statement right there. And I wonder if that is playing a role in some of the different generations of newer workers that we're seeing coming into the trades. And there's been a lot of talk about the Gen Z and things like that coming into the trades. Have you seen different responses between some of the, we'll say, older workers in the trade, some of the earlier generations versus some of the newer generations of technicians in the trade as far as how they enjoy interacting with the process?
It's a powerful insight that you speak to. I will say that even people that are pretty experienced are certainly responding really well to the product, in part because we make it pretty easy to use. You don't have to change your behavior as it relates to putting new data into a system or logging in and doing additional things. We're pulling off the existing data system that exists. That said, certainly people that are digital native, that grew up using cell phones or tablets and are pretty comfortable there, like a lot of the gamification that we can offer. And it helps to give them a sense that they're on the right track in a way that's pretty appealing to them. It is true that for a long time, people would enter the trades and there may have been a perspective of it's a family connection or it's somebody that took an interest in you and that was the reason you were successful. And so I think given this change that we have now where we need a new generation of builders to supplement what is a shortage in our field force, being creative for how we think about not just finding and bringing those people in, but ensuring they're successful once they're there. Because the most critical time is the first 6 months. In those 180 days, if you have success and you find a mentor and you're in a culture that is investing behind you and helping you be successful, they stick. And if that doesn't happen, if it's gosh, we really can't afford to carry these folks right now, and hey, I don't have any hours for you today, I'm going to send you home, or listen, I had to figure out on my own and now you're in that seat, why don't you sweep the floor for the afternoon? Then you see a lot of retention risk. And so it comes down to a question of culture that we can help support through technology in a way to really drive it motivation.
Very good. We could talk all day about these kind of things as topics, but I would encourage any listener to go to upsmith.com, get engaged, take a look at what they got there, read the blog, get in touch with one of their onboarding professionals. They would help you with this. Any closing thoughts? And then I have one final question for you after your closing thought.
The closing thought I have is around how important the mission is. So I think about the work that you all do on this podcast and the motivation that you guys have about telling stories and highlighting what's working and really lifting up the industry. And I think it's awesome. This is exactly the type of thing that's required in a community to be able to help people be successful. One of the things I love about this industry is how focused people are on helping each other. The amount of exchange of what works and best practice networks and the folks at Nexstar I've been so impressed by. It reflects, I think, a sense of wanting to pay it forward. And so we are the beneficiaries of that at Upsmith. People have been really generous to us to help us get more access, understand more, get a better awareness of challenges they face. And we would love to reciprocate that. If someone's out there and they're listening and they're facing challenges around their labor force, reach out to us. There is no commercial expectation immediately on our side. We just want to help. And what we put in our blog and what we put out there is designed to help capture some of the things we're learning in a way that hopefully people will find useful. And then if our technology is helpful and they want to work with us commercially too, that's awesome. We'd love to. But the bigger opportunity here is in addressing a much bigger cause and combating a skilled worker shortage for our country that is at the core of a competitiveness risk we face, which requires everybody.
Very good. Actually, I have two questions. Were you somehow in your life the recipient of this support that helped motivate you to take the steps you've taken?
Thank you for asking. Most certainly, I was the beneficiary of a lot of people making a bet on me. If we went back in time 25 years, I was a farm kid on a tractor in Reform, Alabama, raking hay and waking up early to work in a chicken house. That was my reality, right? And so I was lucky to have really great parents who had high expectations, for sure. And despite not growing up in a super wealthy place or rigorous academic environment, I had people that cared about me a lot. And it was in many ways like a very special small town experience. Played high school sports. Saturday morning after the football game, people would ride by and you'd be putting gas in your pickup truck and they'd say, "Great job last night." But my life since then has been a series of people taking a bet on me and saying, "We think you have potential. Here's a scholarship for college," or "Here's an opportunity for grad school," or "We don't really hire a lot of people from that group in San Francisco, but we think you could be great." And so over time, when that happens in your life a bunch of times, you start to get a sense that, okay, this is toward a bigger cause. This is toward a bigger purpose. And when I finished up my time at Uber, we sold a business to a partner of ours during the pandemic, and it freed me up to say, what would I like to do next? And this was certainly one of the more risky things to do. Starting a company is not the most straightforward when you've got a young family, and my wife and I have 2 kids under 3 years old. And so there's some hard parts of that, but I couldn't imagine a bigger privilege than doing what I do. And my team is exceptional, and the chance to really make a contribution is awesome. And people have trusted us with their capital investing behind the business. And so when we have an opportunity to serve a company that also trusts us to come in and be their partner, it's just one of the most special things in the world. Absolutely. It's around reflecting on how fortunate you've been for people to bet on you and wanting to pay that forward to others.
Absolutely awesome. And so my final question is, it's obvious your last name is embedded in the company name, but I don't think that's the reason it's there. Is it?
Our focus is on upskilling for tradesmiths. So Upsmith is an allusion to an opportunity for upward mobility for a person through the trades. And we also think that it speaks to something that's aspirational because we want to elevate the status of builders in our country and in our society. And we think that builders are at the core and the backbone of what makes the nation great. And so our hope is that the name will be a thing that helps to power some of the brand for sure. But it's really a reflection too on an aspiration we have that we can uplift and create upward opportunity for tradesmiths in this nation.
Fantastic.
Very awesome.
Definition of a smith is an artisan who hammers tools and other items out of hot iron or steel. And I would consider you an artisan who hammers a great software platform out of cool technology.
I'm going to use that. That's good. You got a marketing future, Bill. That's good. Quite seriously, I'm grateful for the chance to be on your podcast. Thanks for what you guys do and for having me aboard.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you coming on, Wyatt.
Thanks, everyone, for listening in this episode with Wyatt Smith of Upsmith. Thanks for spending a few minutes of your time listening to us here at Building HVAC Science Podcast. We hope the content is meeting your expectations or perhaps even exceeding them and revealing some things you may not have known about before today's podcast. If you have any questions or want to suggest a topic or just reach out, you can contact us at marketing@truetechtools.com, TRUTECHTOOLS.com. The Building HVAC Science podcast is a production of True Tech Tools Limited. In full disclosure, I'm a co-owner of True Tech, and the opinions voiced are those of my guests, my co-host, or myself, depending on who is speaking, of course. And if you're in the market for any tools or test instruments mentioned in the podcast or just in general, take a look at what True Tech Tools offers, my company, TRUTECHTOOLS.com. You can also use the offer code HVACBS for a nice discount. I want to thank you for listening and hopefully following us and subscribing to the Building HVAC Science podcast. Until next time, take care.